Welcome to the studio. I'm Keme Nzerem, and our session is titled, What's Shaping the Future IT Workforce? I want to start with Chris Dando, who's the Chief Technologist for CME Industry EMEA at HPE. Chris, lots of stuff going on in the world, circular production, political instability, return from COVID. What key skills do we need to make sure tomorrow's IT workforce are going to be able to deliver?
Sure. So if I think, and try and summarise it very quickly, almost all organisations are becoming digital organisations. Therefore, technology is at the heart of it. Now, I think about if you're going to apply technology to an organisation to a greater extent, the sorts of things that you need, the skills that you need for people within the organisation is ever-increasing communication skills. We've seen that the ability to communicate across vast differences rather than face-to-face has become intrinsic to virtual businesses today. But actually, as we go forward, it will be across an ecosystem. So it's actually taking partners with you, other people in the value chain. Clearly, technology is always changing. So people have to be forever learners. It's not being in technology isn't somewhere where you go in and you do the same thing 5 years after that you were doing on day one. So we need to look for people who are of that mind and are creative thinkers and lateral thinkers, problem solvers, and those sorts of things. So,
Phil Brunkard at Forrester, tech and IT is not just a case anymore of kind of throwing the proverbial bananas to the smart guys in the cage and letting them get on with it. It's really about integrating.
Absolutely, and just to pick up on what Chris said, I mean, it's about the ability to really collaborate across the organisation, but that collaboration has to be effective. So it's about communication, but also it's about being as leaders, in particular, being showing empathy as well in terms of understanding your stakeholder needs and how you translate that into the solutions. It is very much about the critical thinking and problem solving skills that Chris talked about, but it's also about self-management and being able to be a self-starter to drive the initiatives forward and being able to identify where should we be focusing in terms of really helping the business move forward. And because of what Chris says in terms of technology is continuously evolving, it's about having the capability around the tech literacy to understand actually how do you apply that within a business context and being able to bridge the technology with what's needed from the business perspective for rail, in particular when you're talking about emerging technologies like machine learning and how to apply automation and being able to sort of apply that and manage it effectively within the organisation.
And if that's a kind of overview and looking at trends, Christina Scott at OVO, you obviously work in a tremendously interesting space at the moment. I mean, everybody is wondering about the future of energy, and there's a geopolitical dimension to your work as well because you've got people in Ukraine. Just talk us through workforce challenges through that very specific lens of the energy industry.
Yeah, so it's obviously been a busy year for energy, and I think that some of the challenges are in normal years you'd set out, this is our strategy, and everyone would be focused on it. And we've just had to react to the market, to the government schemes that have been brought in and the government schemes that seem to be disappearing again. And so there's just a lot of things that actually you have to be able to communicate across the whole organisation. You mentioned communication, but also looking for the opportunities when you have to make those pivots. So just thinking, actually, how can we make the best of this situation? So if you look at the type of things we've had to do this year, the benefit of it is actually customers for the first time really thinking about their energy usage. And our company is all about decarbonisation and actually efficiency of energy usage. And so we have the opportunity to drive some of the things that we really want to do with this ever-changing world. And so it's being able to just be able to shift, but take the opportunities as they come up.
And if we kind of reflect on what Chris and Phil told us about the communication and the wider skill set, how do your people? I mean, it's a wider question in a sense. The wider IT community, do we have those communication skills, or is there work that we need to do to make sure that people come into an organisation and don't just think of themselves as technologists?
I think we're trying to develop those skills, and We've done something called the Year of Learning, where we've taken different topics, and actually this month we're doing storytelling. And to me, storytelling is so important because actually you need to be able to communicate to people who aren't technologists, to people really complex things. You need to be able to get over the story, but also take people with you. And so to be able to take that narrative, storytelling through data, actually there's lots of things that we talk about data decisions, but actually how do you get other people to understand the data and to understand where we need to go with that?
So I'm going to stretch this metaphor of storytelling and introduce Deborah Haworth, because she works for Penguin Random House, who are, of course, as an organisation, master storytellers. But Deborah, joining us virtually, where do you see the IT workforce challenges in the publishing industry?
So I think, like many around the table, we've got the same issue, which is attracting and retaining people. So it's not necessarily the skills that we need and not necessarily the ones that are available. But I absolutely agree that communication and getting the business message has got to be top of the list. It's no longer do we want technicians hiding in cupboards, sitting in the basement. We need people who are business focused, who are dynamic and agile and can change with the business change of direction. And from my perspective, of course, we need to be able to ensure that we're doing all of that securely. So a base knowledge of the security principles that we should all be adopting is really important without expecting everybody to be a cyber expert. And coming back to Christina's point about storytelling, of course, the best thing about every story is they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And one of the key things we be able to get to the end of the story. So as we start using more data to give key messages, what is the point? What is the end of the story? What is the direction of travel? And where are we going? What is it we want from the conversation? That's a key. I don't think many of us in technology have yet adapted.
Deborah, thank you. We missed a few of your words, but I think we got the gist there. It's about understanding the bigger kind of business goals and being part of that conversation. And Paul Smith at Amnesty, you bring a really interesting perspective to this, because storytelling for your organization and the role of the technologist within, it's actually about more than just profit and the kind of conventional sense of data security. If you guys get it wrong, people's lives are at risk, right?
Absolutely right. For us, it's very much about impact. I think Deborah hit the nail on the head there. For me, there are a couple of key aspects for us. I mean, as a technology team, we have to show empathy, and we have to ensure we understand what it is we're working on, so that technology isn't an addition to the business, it's actually part of, so it's IT in context of the business. Participants have already talked about the importance of communications and the ability to be part of the business, not be insular, not be in the back room. But as a team, we're starting to become orchestrators of products and services and things and platforms. We're not specialists anymore. We're not stuck in the corner of a room. And we're becoming innovators as part of business as usual, because it needs us to be. The organization looks to us for competitive advantage, for risk mitigation, for ideas, for solutions to problems that they didn't know they had yet. So all these sorts of things are becoming important as part of the IT function for us.
Juan, we mentioned a little bit about business focus. You've been working with your team to figure out how your staff team returns back, as everyone has, from remote working to in-person working in an education environment, which brings its own challenges, right?
Yes, absolutely. So as we think about the future workforce, I need to think, what does that workforce need and want? Because you guys are absolutely right in terms of the soft skills and the talent that we need to be attracting. And we need technology to be part of the fabric of the organization. That's the conversation that we've just had. But as I think about the future, the last 2.5 years, COVID has changed a lot of our expectations as employees into the marketplace. So bringing in that flexibility, that agility, the fact that maybe you can work remote a few days a week and a few days in the office, because I think that personal interaction is still really, really important. You still need to be coming together. That's where you're sharing ideas, where you're solving big problems. That collaboration disappears if you're always remote, and you lose that touch with the business. So as technologists, we really need to understand the business that we're there to support as well. We can't work in our silo anymore, because it isn't about the widget you're building. You're really helping your business thrive in a very dynamic environment.
And Daniel Attias, you're in the same space at the London Business School. This isn't just about whether you're working in person or working virtually, is it?
It's not. It's I suppose if I think about the workforce as opposed to the student population, I want to see less and less technologists as such. Really, digital data and technology needs to permeate an entire organisation and really not be a separate, be it in the basement or otherwise. And I think those data skills really are one of the, on top of all of those soft skills, which are the hardest skills to acquire, those data skills across the organisation, not a team of data scientists or a team of data analysts. Because once you've got that, you can start to be more curious. And you can start to build stories, and you can start to really challenge assumptions, and then with that you can start to become more iterative, more experimental, more innovative, because you've got data. You say, I know what I want to get out of it. I've tried it. Is it working or is it not working? It's not working. Let's keep going, and take the emotion out of it to a certain degree.
And if we're talking about getting technologists and technology out of the bunker, there's also a piece to increase the technological literacy of the rest of the workforce, right? And sharing responsibility for this.
Yeah, and I think making use of the schemes there around apprenticeships, for example, boot camps, internal learning. You don't have to turn everyone into a coder, but you certainly want to make everyone data literate at the very least. And you want to try and attract talent from across your organisation to develop those analytical skills or citizen development type skills. You know, automation can now be done without any coding at all. You've got to get that understanding. Otherwise, you end up building chaos across your organisation, because you try and automate something, but you automate a bad process, or you don't have good principles of architecture, and so everything starts to conflict with everything else because nothing's joined up. Ultimately, what we want is a simple business to operate, it's process efficient, and a simple digital business to engage with, so that the customers, it's easy, it makes sense, and it flows. So you need a certain level of orchestration there, and I think those are some core skills, but everyone involved in that orchestra, are playing their instruments and are contributing to the whole.
Chris Dando, of course, a team is only as good as its people. What about the role of industry in influencing and leveraging the workforce of tomorrow, the conversations that you might want to have with the education sector, for example, with government? How are we going to create this panel in 15 years?
Yeah, no. So I think it's a very good point, and having a daughter who's actually going up through the education system at the moment, I think there's more that we should do, and to sing from the rooftops, as it were, about how technology is changing industry, so it doesn't appear to be that sort of backroom coding type activity and what have you, and how does technology influence industry. So, personally, I'd like to see, much more about the intersection as you're going through education of technology with industry, and therefore some of these sort of joint courses that you might have with regards to digital industry and so forth, so that people start getting, you might be focused on going into medicine or something, you might say that, but actually understanding that in the future it's going to be technology-enabled medicine rather than traditional medicine, and therefore, having that understanding, and therefore getting people excited about technology and its changing of the world, as it were.
Juan, I can see you nodding away there.
Yes, you're so right. We've been, through our School of Medicine, for instance, we've been applying technology to deliver much better clinical learning. So we're now using HoloLens to deliver word rounds. So this is augmented reality, where before the pandemic you could take 15, 20 people around the world, your medical students. You can't really do that anymore. You couldn't do that through the pandemic anymore. So we started to use HoloLens, or things like become very complex. How do you use technology to teach rectal examinations, for instance? As, you know, and so that's that application of technology. It's amazing the research and the innovation we're doing in that space, especially around medicine.
So if some of this is about kind of making it sexy, to pardon the pun. Christina, I wonder in energy, how are you selling a career in energy?
You don't think energy is sexy?
Well, I tell you what, it's interesting at the moment.
I think for our company, there's a good story, because actually we're an energy company, but we have a very strong mission. And so the mission to decarbonise UK homes is a real one, and really important to the environment, but also, as we see, in terms of the sustainability of the economics and everything else. So everything that we've learnt this year. And so I think for a company, you have to really be clear about your purpose, and I think be able to tell that story. And I think that a lot of companies haven't quite got that story right yet, or have a story but they don't live it. And
they
so,
may have a legacy business and they're trying to figure out what their space is.
Yeah,
in the world.
or they've sort of attached some sort of sustainability role, and they think that they've covered sustainability and it's over here. It's not built into the fabric of the company. And so I think more and more that's what people are looking for. They're looking for, obviously, compensation for doing a role, but what difference am I going to make?
Phil, you obviously have a helicopter view to some extent because you work with lots of different organisations. Talk to them about leadership, indeed.
Yeah, just to pick up on Christina's point, you know, we also need to think about what the new generation of talent is seeking in terms of their lifetime career. Yes, it's very much about purpose, but it's also about, you know, the future of fixed roles will not exist anymore. So they're looking for flexibility to move into opportunities where they can work on assignments and move from, you know, across different roles within an organization, across different roles even outside of the organization, and really get that broad experience. And that's particularly important in the early years. So we also need to think about, as an organization, how we allow those mechanisms to work, because that's what the new generations coming through
they don't want to come in and just be labelled.
This is your box. And they don't want a single career within a single company. You know, it's all about having that flexibility, that adaptability, that developing the skills across multiple environments, and and getting that broad experience in its truest sense. So we need to find ways to attract talent to enable those opportunities, because you will be successful by providing those opportunities, as well as the purpose, as well as the right type of skills development as well.
Paul Smith at Amnesty, you obviously have a very, very clear mission and very, very clear values. But how does that translate when you're recruiting technologists or IT workforce? What do they want when they come to you? What do you offer them?
It's a great question. I think that's the beauty of working in the not-for-profit sector. I think is purpose is there, and it's entrenched in everything that you do, and not just at Amnesty, but in previous roles such as the RNLI. I think so that enables you to have that conversation at the door. You know that someone that's going to be applying for your organisation wants to join you because they want to make a difference with you. And I think there are a lot of commercial organisations that would probably pay a lot of money for that kind of engagement. And so that really helps us recruit talent. But we're also finding it's easier for us to get reach because of that. Because we're already attractive and already relevant to that individual. And it enables us to provide slightly lower barriers to entry, I guess, for some of our roles, because, the empathy is there for our cause. They're willing to go the extra mile. And so to an extent, it does make our job slightly easier, which helps when you're in the not-for-profit sector, because you can't always compete on things like salary.
But you are looking for a skill set that, you're a small team, by definition, you're going to need people that are going to be able to come in and say, no, that's interesting, I want to take additional responsibilities on.
Absolutely, because they've got that level of engagement, because they're purpose driven, they're pretty, well, I'm not going to say they're happy, but they're more open to turning their hand to everything, to pitch in. You know, if something needs doing, the sleeves get rolled up and it gets done. The not my job scenario hasn't existed as much in this sector in my experience, which is, it makes my life easier and it provides more opportunity to the individual to learn on the job as well, actually. So I'm grateful for it.
And Deborah Haworth, Penguin Random House, do you get the not my job scenario in publishing, or are people purpose driven?
People are very purpose driven actually in publishing. Certainly at Penguin, we're a very big brand, well established, and lots of people are attracted to come and work with us. I think the challenge in our technical roles, of course, is that we're looking for certain skill sets. We have started we're on our journey of digital and data transformation. So we're looking for some very modern and up-to-date skills. But of course, we have a lot of legacy skills that we're also looking for because we've been around a long time. We run large distribution centers. We've got some very old types of technology that we're maintaining. So we have a divergence in the sort of skills that we need. But the same is that people want to work for us. And we tend to find that at the point at which they no longer want to work for us is because we're in a very competitive marketplace for those skills. So especially from our central London offices, where we've got big tech providers wanting to attract skilled technical resources to, you know, the kind of the suburbs and high salaries and exciting, sexy lifestyles on the road as a tech consultant. I know it's not that sexy. I did that for a number of years. But when you're new and you're in the industry, a couple of years under your belt, that's an exciting opportunity. And it is an opportunity to get different industry experience, different technology experiences. So it's very hard to compete against that sometimes.
Danny, there is a talent shortage.
Yeah, there is. And I think to that point of attraction and retention, so currently I work for London Business School. Previously I was at Anti-Nolan, the blood cancer charity and stem cell register. And so that purpose goes a long way. It almost, you can add it to the package, the whole package. That's being squeezed, as we heard from Amnesty, by the cost of living crisis. So there are people who would say, I'm prepared to take a pay cut 2 years ago, whereas now they're going, I can't afford to take a pay cut to come work in this type of industry. So that makes it harder. And so there is that bigger package of how do you make it attractive? What is your brand as a business? What is your brand as a technology function? And also, once you've got them in, how do you keep them there? And that's about continuous learning. It's about empowerment. It's about psychological safety. It's about work-life balance. You know, all of those pieces really count. They're the difference between this is not for me, I'm going to go and earn more money, or, well, I could earn more money, but this is really comfortable, I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm making a difference.
And Christina, you know, that purpose piece, decarbonising energy in your, you know, from your viewpoint.
Yeah, so I mean, the purpose is really key, but I think also when you're looking at retention and keeping people, you know, people are attracted to money. So let's be clear that, you know, there have definitely been money talks at the start of the year. People were being offered, you know, more than double their salaries. And it's very difficult for someone to say, yeah, really believe in this purpose, and I'm going to turn down that sort of money. And so I think the market is cooling a little bit in terms of those salaries. But I think also we have to be a bit braver in our terms of recruitment. So, you know, if you lose a senior software engineer, actually take someone with potential that you can train and grow within the company. Don't just always try and swap out like for like, even though you might perceive that that's the fastest and easiest thing to do. And so I think companies have to be slightly more broad-minded in terms of where they're looking for people and how they're looking for people, as well as selling the purpose.
Invest in your own people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil Brunkard.
I just thinking it's interesting that we're at a football club today, and you know in the industry, traditionally we tend to think reactively to talent and skills, and it's always about skills rather than sort of having something strategic in place and looking for potential. And we look at football clubs and they set up the academies and they're constantly thinking about the skills for the future, And I think within IT, we kind of need to have that mindset as well and be a bit more long-term in terms of, finding people early in their, in their development, even pre-job stage and look at how we sort of bring them into the industry. Maybe there's some learning that we can take from the football clubs, perhaps. Yeah.
Chris Dando, what more do we need to do to stem this shortage?
So I think there's a number of things. Firstly is don't do the mundane. Yeah, there's technologies out there that can stop you doing the mundane type things, and therefore, efficiency is always going to be at the centre of, the engine room, the back end side of things. So do that most effectively. If that means getting other people to do it because they can do it more effectively, then that's good. I think as technologists, we need to be passionate about how we are changing things. So coming back to the purpose and so forth, sharing, with our ecosystem of people that we touch and contact with every day. People say to me, "What do you do?" I work in IT, and that's where the conversation would often finish. Yeah, but actually, when you start saying, "Actually, I work in technology, and this is how it's changed your life in the last 10 years, and how does that mean that it's going to help you in the next 10 years?" will make it more exciting for people to come into the technology industry rather than it being thought about as a.
So it's the storytelling, and back to Christina, with energy being such a hot topic, what are some of the stories you can tell to make it interesting to because it's not just the 15-year-olds that are choosing their GCSE options, and apologies to those watching who are not from the UK, but we've got to get young people 5, 6, 7, 8 interested in this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And I think one of the things, because I think this is called about IT for this, which I immediately react to.
Recoiled.
It's not IT. And actually, I think what we don't do very well is we say technology as though it's a thing. Everyone automatically thinks about coding. And so actually showing the breadth of roles, so whether you're someone who works in user experience or design or product, they're all very different roles, and actually you can really bring those to life. And coming from a media background as well, actually creating videos which show actually what people do and how different all the roles are, and actually there's something for everybody, even if you're not a mathematician or someone who wants to do coding. We could do so much more.
Paul Smith, in the advocacy world, obviously the storytelling is focused on the output. Is there something that we can learn here around how we attract talent into that sector?
I think there can be. I think it's a lot of the good points have already been mentioned, but we have to remember we're dealing with a changing demographic as well in terms of the recruits that we're looking to hire. And they want different things from a role than previous employees. So they're looking at personal brand more. So they're interested in what's in it for them, not just what's in it for the organisation. So how can this role help you grow your career? In full transparency, you may leave us in 2 or 3 years. Help us on that journey. We'll help you. It's a reciprocal agreement. We'll go on our way. I think that's really important. And I think also the ability to tell stories from individuals that have already been successful in that role or can have shown progression through an organisation. So it's not just lip service. It's not just me saying this is available to you, but here's how we've brought that to life. I think that's powerful too. And let new recruits close to your challenges from the off, so they know what they're walking into, so they know where they may be added value, to get them to think about that as part of the application process. I think transparency is really important for me.
Phil?
I think when it comes to trying to find talent, we focus too much on the what and the how, but we need to tell the stories on the why and work for us. And as Paul just said, the who. So who are the people in the organisation that are doing wonderful things, that are driving change, or solving simple problems, and creating stories where people, the people that we want to attract can identify them doing the similar type role and making the same sort of difference within the organisation.
We're coming to the end, unfortunately, so I want to do a quick go round. Your one request from the IT, pardon the phrase, because I know I can also go, one request from the community, from your peers, that would make all of your jobs easier. We're going to start with Danny.
I would encourage people to not always look outside the organisation for talent, look within the organisation, and as Christina said, develop the talent from within, which means we are all contributing to the gap, filling the gap, because they're going to last 2, 3, 4 years, and then they're going to move on. So we're effectively addressing the problem rather than making the problem worse, compounding.
Christina Scott.
I think I'd like people to take more credit. So often in organisations, you'll see maybe commercial people or marketing people taking credit for something, but actually...
Because they're the storytellers,
yes,
aren't they?
they're the storytellers.
They're stealing your stories.
All driven by technology. And so I'd like people to get out there really saying why technology is driving the value. So we stop being seen as a cost centre and actually we're seen as the value, and actually most companies will just end up as technology companies, I think, in the future.
Juan Villamil.
So I think for me, it's about creating that talent pipeline through schemes like apprenticeships, restart type of programs. And it's also about getting the message out there, telling the stories, not only to the traditional communities, but across every community, and bring diversity into our IT workforce, our technology workforces. We need to get the message out there to all communities as well and tell those stories, because it is a very exciting space to be working in.
Chris Dando.
So I'd say thinking about doing things differently and trying it. So not feeling constrained by the way you did things yesterday, last year, and so forth.
So that does require courage and confidence. It
Indeed.
requires leaders to say, you know what, I've got an idea.
Indeed. And I think that experimentation is going to become more and more important as we go into the future.
Phil Brunkard.
Well, when we come to work, we treat organisations like rational systems, but actually it's a group of people coming together with that messy element of emotion. So, we need to learn to, as leaders in particular, to better connect with empathy and emotion, and that's where storytelling comes in.
Storytelling, Deborah Haworth.
Yes. So for me, actually, I think one of the biggest things we can do to solve our own problem is to be more open in the sort of people we want to attract into technology roles. So let's stop looking for people who are the same as us and start being more diverse in our search, be more dynamic in the diversity of our search is what I'm trying to say, so that we can open the recruitment channels to areas of the population that we haven't reached yet. Let's improve the demographic mix across technology roles from the bottom to the top. So I'm talking about more women, I'm talking about more people from the LGBTQ community. That's what I'm talking about, more Black people, more Asian people, other minorities, people from different backgrounds to our own. That's what I think we should be doing.
Thank you. I think some great points already been made. I think for me, there's been some good work on lowering barriers to entry, but I think there's more to be done, not just for early years careers, but also for people looking to change careers midlife, to bring that rich business skill into IT. I think there's more focus that can be done there, and more opportunity as well, actually, to fill that talent gap.
Thank you very much indeed to all of the panel. Lots and lots of food for thought there, lots of insight, and crucially, some really good tips for where we go from here. You have been watching The Studio. I'm Keme Nzerem, and we have been talking about the future of the IT workforce.